The silent observers. The Galactic Assembly's emergency session buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered in the vast crystal dome of New Centauri. The massive chamber, usually a symbol of cooperation and unity, now felt like a tomb. Admiral Zextal of the Meridian Alliance stood at the central podium, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the harsh lights above as he delivered the grimmest report in recent galactic history. The swarm has taken the Rigel sector. His voice resonated through the chamber. 37 worlds. Gone. Not conquered, consumed. The holographic display behind him showed the spreading darkness of swarm territory, systems blinking out one by one like dying stars. In the upper tiers of the chamber, Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth's diplomatic corps sat quietly, taking notes on her quantum tablet. Unlike the other representatives who wore ornate robes or ceremonial armor, she dressed in a simple black suit. Earth held only observer status in the assembly, a position they'd maintained for the past century, despite numerous invitations to full membership. The swarm had emerged from deep space 18 months ago, a collective consciousness controlling billions of biomechanical entities. They consumed everything in their path: organic matter, technology, even raw materials, using it to produce more of themselves. Traditional weapons proved useless against their adaptive shields. The Meridian Alliance, the galaxy's premier military force, had lost every engagement. The Arcturus defense line has failed. Zextal continued, his usual military pride replaced by barely concealed desperation. Our most advanced weaponry, our strongest shields, they adapt to everything within hours. We estimate they'll reach the core worlds within 3 months. Sarah watched as panic spread through the chamber. The Volari delegation, usually so stoic with their silicon-based bodies, were vibrating with anxiety. The quantum consciousness of the Helios Collective was broadcasting distress patterns visible to the naked eye. Even the ancient Draconids, who had survived the death of their original star system, showed fear in their multifaceted eyes. She activated her neural link to Earth Command. They're ready to accept any solution, she subvocalized. Even from us. The response came instantly. Proceed with Revelation Protocol. Sarah stood, her movement drawing surprised looks from nearby delegates. Humans rarely spoke at these sessions, content to watch and trade with whoever would accept their antiquated spacecraft and basic technology. The Assembly's president, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate mechanical shell, turned toward her. The observer from Earth wishes to speak. The president's tone carried a hint of confusion. While we appreciate humanity's interest, this crisis requires. We can stop the swarm, Sarah stated simply. The chamber erupted in a mixture of laughs, scoffs, and confused murmurs. Admiral Zextal's crystalline form sparkled as he turned to face her. With respect, Observer Chen, humanity's military technology is centuries behind the Meridian Alliance. Your ships still use primitive fusion drives and kinetic weapons. Sarah smiled. That's what we wanted you to think. She raised her hand, and the chamber's holographic system was suddenly overridden. The display showed a new image, a massive spherical object in deep space, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. This is the swarm's central processing node, she continued, what you might call their brain. We located it 3 months ago. We've been studying them since they first entered this galaxy. We know how they think, how they evolve, and most importantly, how to stop them. The chamber fell silent. The president's energy form pulsed with intense colors. Impossible. Our best stealth technology cannot penetrate swarm space. Their detection systems are based on principles you understand. Sarah interrupted politely. We chose a different path. While the galaxy focused on energy shields and plasma weapons, we explored alternatives. We developed technologies that don't show up on your scans because you're not looking for them. We built ships that don't need engines as you understand them. We created weapons that don't rely on energy or kinetics. She gestured, and the hologram changed again, showing a fleet of ships unlike anything the assembly had seen. They seemed to bend the light around them, their surfaces showing perfect reflections of space itself. "We have a fleet ready to deploy. We can end this war in 5 hours, but we need the Assembly's authorization to operate in meridian space." Admiral Zextel's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism. 5 hours. We fought them for 18 months. You fought them the way they expected you to fight, Sarah explained. We'll fight them differently, but we need your trust, and we need it now. The node is preparing to duplicate itself. If that happens, stopping them becomes significantly more complex. The president's shell hummed as it processed this information. Why? Why reveal this now? Why not earlier, before so many worlds were lost? Sarah's expression softened. Because once we reveal our true capabilities, everything changes. The balance of power, diplomatic relations, trade agreements, nothing will be the same. We needed to be certain our intervention was absolutely necessary. She paused, looking around the chamber. We believe it is now. The assembly erupted in debate. Some delegates demanded immediate acceptance of Earth's offer, while others warned of trickery or ulterior motives. The president raised its appendages for silence. Observer Chen, if what you say is true, if humanity has truly hidden such capabilities, how can we trust you? Sarah stood straighter. Because we've had these capabilities for decades, and we've never used them against you. We could have conquered, dominated, or exploited. Instead, we waited, watched, and prepared, not to rule the galaxy, but to protect it when needed. She smiled again. We don't want your territories or resources. We want a stable galaxy where commerce and culture can flourish. Right now, that means stopping the swarm. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a silence of realization. Every species present was suddenly reevaluating their understanding of humanity. Those simple trading ships, those basic weapons, those outdated drives, all had been a carefully maintained facade. The president's shell gleamed as it reached a decision. The assembly will vote. The motion is to grant humanity full military access to meridian space and authority to engage the swarm threat. Light pulses indicated votes being cast. Motion carries. Observer Chen, the galaxy is in humanity's hands. Sarah nodded and activated her neural link. Command, we have authorization. Launch the fleet. As she sat down, she could feel the eyes of the galaxy upon her. Humanity's long vigil as the silent observers was over. In 5 hours, everything would change. Breaking the silence. Admiral James Chen stood on the bridge of the EFS Nightingale, watching as his fleet emerged from quantum space. The ships appeared like ripples in reality itself, their metamaterial hulls reflecting the starlight in impossible ways. To the human eye, they looked like holes in space where stars refused to shine. To alien sensors, they simply didn't exist. All ships present and accounted for, Admiral, reported Commander Lisa Rodriguez, her hands dancing over the neural interface. The swarm hasn't detected our arrival. The fleet had deployed in a perfect spherical formation around the swarm's processing node. 300 ships, each carrying technology that would rewrite the galaxy's understanding of warfare. James thought of his sister Sarah, still in the assembly chamber, managing the diplomatic side of this revelation. His job was to prove humanity's capabilities weren't just bold claims. Status of the concordance system, he asked. Online and synchronized across all ships, Rodriguez replied. The quantum entanglement network is stable. We can execute coordinated actions with zero communication lag. That was humanity's first advantage, true technological unity. While other species relied on faster-than-light communications that could be intercepted or jammed, human ships shared a consciousness through quantum-entangled particles. Every ship knew what every other ship knew, instantly and securely. Show me the node's analysis, James commanded. The bridge's holographic display transformed into a complex web of energy patterns and data flows. The swarm's central node was a marvel of biological and mechanical engineering, but its very complexity made it vulnerable, if you knew where to look. The swarm operates on a quantum neural network, explained Dr. Amara Patel, the fleet's chief scientist. Their consciousness exists in a superposition of states, allowing them to process information and adapt at incredible speeds. But quantum systems have inherent vulnerabilities. James nodded. They can't maintain coherence indefinitely. Exactly. Their adaptability comes from quantum uncertainty. They exist in all possible states until they need to respond to a threat. That's why conventional weapons fail. The swarm literally becomes whatever it needs to be to survive an attack. But humanity had spent decades developing a different approach. Their ships carried no conventional weapons. Instead, they wielded the fundamental forces of reality itself. Deploy the quantum observer arrays, James ordered. Across the fleet, invisible fields of quantum sensors activated, creating a web of observation points around the node. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation forces a system to choose a single state. By observing the swarm from multiple angles simultaneously, they could lock its quantum neural network into a single configuration. The node's surface began to crystallize as its quantum flexibility was stripped away. Patterns that once flowed like liquid metal became rigid and brittle. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "we're detecting a response." The node is attempting to broadcast its consciousness to secondary locations. "Deploy Phase 2, James commanded. From the fleet's ships emerged clouds of microscopic machines, not nanobots as other species understood them, but quantum-scale processors that existed in multiple dimensions. They flowed through space like a silver mist, surrounding the node in a cocoon of computational power. "Quantum isolation field at 100%, reported Dr. Patel. "The node can't maintain quantum coherence. It's being forced into classical space." The swarm, for the first time in its existence, was being forced to play by the rules of normal spacetime. Its greatest strength, the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously, had become its greatest weakness. But the node wasn't defenseless. Massive energy tentacles lashed out at the human fleet, each capable of tearing a conventional warship apart. The shots passed harmlessly through the human vessels, their metamaterial hulls bending space itself to redirect the energy. "They're adapting," Rodriguez noted, attempting to reconfigure their attack patterns. James allowed himself a small smile. "They're trying to solve a quantum problem with classical physics. Execute final phase." The quantum processors surrounding the node began to spin in impossible geometries, creating a cascade of forced observations. Each observation forced the node to collapse into a single state, then another, billions of times per second. The swarm's consciousness, trapped in an endless loop of quantum collapse, couldn't maintain its coherence. "Node stability at 40% and falling," reported Dr. Patel. 30%, 20%. The massive sphere began to crack, its surface breaking apart as its quantum nature was systematically destroyed. The energy tentacles flickered and died as the consciousness controlling them fragmented. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "we're detecting massive energy buildups in the secondary swarm concentrations. They're attempting to redirect control functions." "Deploy the quantum isolation fields around all secondary targets," James ordered. "Don't let them establish new nodes." The human fleet split seamlessly, groups of ships moving to surround each swarm concentration. The quantum observation web expanded, forcing every part of the swarm into classical space simultaneously. Throughout the galaxy, the supposedly invincible swarm began to fail. Without their quantum advantages, their physical forms were just machines. Advanced, but no longer adaptive. Their collective consciousness, unable to maintain quantum coherence, began to break down into individual components. "Node collapse at 99%, Dr. Patel announced. "Final quantum signatures destabilizing. Collapse complete. The swarm's central consciousness has been terminated." James watched as the mighty sphere, once the brain of a seemingly unstoppable force, broke apart into inert fragments. Around the galaxy, swarm units were falling dormant, their controlling intelligence gone. Time elapsed, he asked quietly. Rodriguez checked her display. 4 hours, 17 minutes since deployment. James nodded and opened a channel to the Galactic Assembly. This is Admiral Chen. The swarm has been neutralized. We're beginning containment and cleanup operations. In the silence that followed, he could almost feel the shock rippling through the assembly. Humanity had done in less than 5 hours what the combined forces of the galaxy couldn't accomplish in 18 months. Send a message to all ships, he ordered. Begin collecting swarm debris for analysis, and prepare for company. I suspect our alien friends will have a lot of questions. As his fleet moved to secure the area, James thought about how the galaxy would change now that humanity's true capabilities were known. They had hidden their advancement for so long, playing the role of technological primitives while quietly preparing for a moment like this. The silent observers had finally shown their hand, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Revolution of War. The Meridian Alliance's flagship, Eternal Dawn, hung in space above the remnants of the swarm node, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in brilliant patterns. Inside its observation deck, Admiral Zextal watched as human ships methodically collected the scattered pieces of what had once been the galaxy's greatest threat. Impossible, muttered Senior Architect Verlon, the Alliance's chief military scientist. His sensor stalks waved in agitation as he studied readings from the debris field. Their ships don't even have conventional engines. No plasma drives, no quantum tunneling. They're manipulating space-time itself for propulsion. A human vessel passed nearby, its metamaterial hull seeming to bend reality around it. What had appeared to be primitive human technology was now revealed as something far beyond the Alliance's understanding. Each piece of debris the humans collected was encased in fields that defied conventional physics. They didn't just defeat the swarm, Verlon continued, his voice trembling. They fundamentally altered the laws of probability around it. They forced quantum uncertainty into classical certainty, the mathematical implications alone. The observation deck's door whispered open, admitting Dr. Sarah Chen. She had traded her simple diplomatic suit for a uniform that seemed to absorb light, decorated only with a single silver pin shaped like Earth's double helix. Gentlemen, she greeted them. I trust the cleanup operation meets with your approval. Zextal's crystalline form vibrated with barely contained emotions. You've been watching us all struggle against the swarm, watching worlds die, when you could have stopped this at any time. No, Sarah replied firmly. We couldn't have stopped it at any time. What you're seeing now is the result of centuries of preparation, observation, and strategic positioning. We needed certain conditions to be met. We needed the swarm to commit its resources in specific ways. Most importantly, we needed absolute certainty of success. She gestured, and the deck's holographic systems activated, displaying a complex web of causality lines and probability vectors. This is what we were waiting for, the perfect moment when the swarm's quantum network would be most vulnerable to our intervention. Verlon's sensor stalks went rigid with shock. You can predict quantum events at this scale. That's theoretically impossible. Impossible with your understanding of quantum mechanics. Sarah corrected gently. We took a different path. While the galaxy raced to build bigger ships and more powerful weapons, we focused on understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on one of the human ships. Our vessels don't fight physics. They work with it. We don't force reality to bend to our will. We ask nicely and suggest favorable outcomes. Suggest. Zextal's voice carried disbelief. To whom? Sarah smiled. To the universe itself. Every quantum event is a question, and every classical outcome is an answer. We learn to phrase the questions in ways that make our preferred answers more likely. The hologram shifted again, showing the inner workings of a human ship, There were no conventional engines, no power cores as the Alliance understood them. Instead, the entire vessel was a single integrated system of quantum probability manipulators. Your civilizations built machines to dominate nature, Sarah explained. We built machines to collaborate with it. Our ships don't move through space. They negotiate with space-time to create paths of least resistance. Our weapons don't force outcomes. They make certain outcomes infinitely more probable than others. Verlon's scientific training warred with his disbelief. But the energy requirements, the computational power needed to calculate quantum probabilities at this scale, would be impossible using conventional computing, Sarah agreed. That's why we don't use conventional computing. Our systems operate on principles you haven't discovered yet. We don't process information. We create localized regions where the laws of physics themselves handle the calculations for us. Zextal moved closer to the hologram, studying the intricate patterns. And this is why you maintain the facade of technological inferiority, to prevent others from following your path. Partially, Sarah admitted, but mainly because we knew that once we revealed our true capabilities, everything would change. The galaxy's balance of power, its economic systems, its understanding of what's possible. Nothing can go back to how it was before. She waved her hand, and the hologram expanded to show the entire sector. Human ships were systematically creating quantum isolation fields around each collection of swarm debris, ensuring no part of its consciousness could reestablish itself. What happens now? Zextal asked quietly. Now. Sarah's expression turned serious. Now we help the galaxy advance, but carefully. Some of our technologies aren't just advanced. They're dangerous. Used improperly, they could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. We'll share what we can, when we believe it can be used responsibly. Verlon's sensor stalks drooped. You'll be our teachers. No, Sarah smiled. We'll be your partners. Humanity didn't achieve this by working alone. We studied every species, learned from your achievements and your mistakes. Now it's time to work together openly, to face whatever other threats the universe might hold. Outside the observation deck, another human ship passed by, its hull reflecting the light of 1 trillion possibilities. The silent observers had become active participants, and the galaxy would have to adapt to a new understanding of what was possible. The revolution wasn't just in how wars would be fought. It was in how reality itself could be understood and shaped by those who asked the right questions in the right ways. 5 hours of thunder. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had never been so quiet. On the central holodisplay, data streamed in from across the galaxy as the full scope of humanity's victory became clear. 5 hours had changed everything. Chancellor Kex of the Helios Collective, a being of pure energy, pulsed with intense patterns as he reviewed the reports. In the Rigel sector, dormant swarm units are dissolving. Their quantum matrices are simply unwriting themselves. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, now wearing her full diplomatic regalia, a uniform that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. A planned effect, she explained. We didn't just defeat the swarm, we introduced a cascading quantum collapse that ensures they can't reconstitute themselves. The Assembly's attention shifted to a new hologram showing human ships recovering swarm debris. But they weren't simply collecting it. They were altering the fundamental structure of the material itself, changing its quantum signature to something benign. Your ships, began High Speaker Mora of the Draconids, her scaled form shifting uneasily. They move without engines, fight without weapons, and communicate without signals. How is this possible? Sarah gestured, and the hologram transformed into a complex mathematical model. Conventional technology fights against universal constants. Our approach is different. We learn to work with the underlying fabric of reality itself. The display showed a human vessel passing through space. It didn't so much move as suggest to space-time that it should be somewhere else, and reality complied. 3 centuries ago, Sarah continued, humanity reached a crossroads. We could follow the conventional path of technological development, Bigger engines, stronger weapons, harder armor. Or we could try to understand why the universe works the way it does. The hologram shifted to show Earth's solar system, now encased in subtle fields that bent light and probability in strange ways. We chose understanding. Instead of building more powerful computers, we learned to use space-time itself as a computational medium. Rather than developing faster engines, we studied how to make distance itself more cooperative. The assembly erupted in a chaos of questions and demands. Sarah raised her hand for silence, and the chamber quieted, whether from respect or the subtle quantum influences humanity now openly wielded, none could say. What you're seeing isn't just advanced technology, she explained. It's a fundamentally different approach to existence itself. Our ships don't generate energy fields. They create localized regions where the laws of physics favor our preferred outcomes. In the upper tiers, Admiral Zextel's crystalline form vibrated with realization. The trading ships, the outdated technology. It was all a facade. Sarah nodded. Every human vessel that visited your worlds was gathering data, not just about your technology, but about the quantum structure of your space. Every primitive sensor was actually mapping probability fields and causal networks. The hologram expanded to show the galaxy at large, now overlaid with an intricate web of quantum relationships and probability vectors that human ships had spent centuries mapping. We needed to understand everything. Sarah continued. How your technologies interacted with space-time, how your weapons affected quantum fields, how your shields manipulated probability. We couldn't risk interfering until we knew exactly how our actions would ripple through the fabric of reality. Chancellor Kex's energy form pulsed rapidly. And now, what happens to the balance of power in our galaxy? Sarah's expression softened. Now we help, but carefully. Some of our technologies can't be shared. Not because we want to maintain superiority, but because improper use could literally unravel the structure of space-time. She waved her hand, and the hologram showed scenes from across the galaxy. Human ships helping to rebuild worlds devastated by the swarm, working with local scientists to stabilize damaged regions of space. We don't want to rule or dominate, Sarah assured them. We want to guide and protect. The universe is vast and full of wonders and dangers. The swarm was just one of many possible threats. Together, we can be ready for whatever comes next. The assembly chamber filled with murmurs of discussion as representatives began to grasp the implications. Humanity hadn't just changed the outcome of one war. They had fundamentally altered the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. 5 hours, Admiral Zextel mused. You changed everything in 5 hours. Sarah smiled. No, Admiral. We spent 300 years preparing for those 5 hours. The change itself was inevitable. We just had to wait for the right moment. Outside the chamber's windows, Earth ships continued their work, their metamaterial hulls bending starlight in impossible ways. The silent observers had finally revealed their true nature, and the galaxy would never be the same. The age of conventional warfare was over. A new era had begun, one where the fundamental forces of reality itself were the battlefield, and humanity held the keys to understanding them. The dawn of understanding. 1 month after humanity's revelation, the new Centauri space station hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every major galactic civilization crowded the station's grand observatory, watching as human ships demonstrated technologies that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. Admiral James Chen stood beside his sister Sarah, observing the reactions of their alien guests. Through the observatory's vast windows, the ESS Nightingale performed what would have once been called impossible maneuvers, its metamaterial hull flowing like liquid starlight. They're still struggling to accept it, Sarah noted quietly, especially the theoretical physics councils. James smiled. Can you blame them? We just told them that reality is negotiable if you ask nicely enough. Below them, Dr. Amara Patel was explaining humanity's approach to a group of fascinated alien scientists. Her hands traced patterns in the air as she spoke, quantum displays materializing to illustrate her points. The key was stopping trying to force the universe to do what we wanted, she explained. Instead, we learned to create conditions where our preferred outcomes became the path of least resistance. It's the difference between damming a river and understanding how water naturally flows. The alien scientists watched in awe as she demonstrated, creating a small region of space where probability itself seemed to flow like water, forming patterns that defied conventional physics. But the implications for causality began Verilon, his sensor stalks twitching with excitement and concern. If you can influence quantum probability at this scale, we can't change what has happened, Amara assured him. We can only influence what might happen next, and even then, we can only suggest. The universe always has the final say. In another corner of the observatory, Admiral Zextal was reviewing the preliminary sharing agreements with Earth's diplomatic team. Humanity had carefully categorized their technologies, those that could be shared immediately, those that required preparation, and those that had to remain restricted for the safety of space-time itself. Your generosity is unexpected, Zextal admitted. Many feared you would use your advantages to dominate. Domination is inefficient, responded the human diplomat. Cooperation yields better results. We've had these capabilities for centuries. If we wanted to conquer, we would have done so long ago. Above the station, a fleet of human ships was constructing something new, a network of quantum observation posts that would help protect the galaxy from future threats. The structures seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, their forms shifting and flowing as they manipulated the very fabric of reality. James moved to the center of the observatory, drawing everyone's attention. What you're seeing is just the beginning, he announced. We've spent centuries mapping the quantum structure of our galaxy, understanding how everything connects at the most fundamental level. Now we can use that knowledge not just for defense, but for exploration and discovery. He gestured, and the observatory's displays showed the edge of known space. There are wonders out there that none of us can imagine. Threats, too. But together, combining your knowledge with our understanding of quantum mechanics, we can be ready for anything. Sarah stepped forward to join him. The age of isolation is over, for all of us. Humanity kept to the shadows because we needed to understand before we acted. Now it's time for true collaboration. The displays shifted to show new ship designs, hybrids of conventional technology and human quantum engineering. We'll teach you what we can, learn what you can share, and face the future together. The galaxy is changing, but change brings opportunity. Around them, alien representatives began to discuss possibilities that would have seemed impossible just a month ago. Trade routes that could bend space-time for efficient transport. Defense systems that worked with quantum probability rather than brute force. Communication networks that operated through quantum entanglement, instantaneous across any distance. 5 hours changed everything, Zextal mused, his crystalline form reflecting the starlight. No, Sarah corrected gently. 5 hours just revealed what was always possible. The real change is what we do next. Outside the observatory, the quantum observation network neared completion. Each node was a testament to what could be achieved when intelligence and understanding worked in harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. The silent observers had finally spoken, sharing their knowledge not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners in a greater journey. They had shown the galaxy that the laws of physics weren't limitations to be overcome, but partners to be understood. As the gathered representatives began planning for this new era, the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging that their secrets were finally being understood by those who had learned to listen rather than command. The dawn of understanding had arrived, and with it, the promise of a future where the impossible was just a matter of asking the right questions in the right way.